All right, hello everybody, and welcome to the virtual EIS. My name is Mark Deloya. I'm a senior here at Purdue studying nuclear engineering. With me, I have Dana.
Hi everyone, my name is Dana. I'm a senior studying chemical engineering here at Purdue from Carmel, Indiana.
Oh yeah, and I'm originally from Dayton, Ohio. Thanks for tuning in today. We know that everything with COVID-19 has made the visiting experience a little bit different, but we're still going to try and give you all the information you'd get if you were on campus. If you guys have questions, feel free to send them in the YouTube chat. We've got that up and we're monitoring. So if you've got questions during the presentation, shoot them there and we'll do our best to answer them as we go. We're going to go ahead and get started. So first of all, we like to start off with our points of pride. So first of all, Purdue was ranked as the #8 public university in the nation. That was done by Times Higher Education, and that's a very holistic viewpoint. That takes everything into account, like our academics, but in addition to that, it takes into account our residence hall life, student life, our dining courts, campus feel, how students feel on campus, and all that good stuff. So we're really proud of being #8. We are the #9 engineering program, so that was done by the U.S. News and World Report. That's actually a stat of different engineering professors ranking engineering schools, which is pretty awesome. So different engineering professors around the nation have said that Purdue stands #9 among them all. And that's just holistically all of our engineering programs. We have specific programs that are also ranked. We have a very competitive aeronautical and astronautical engineering program, as well as agriculture and biological. So a lot of rankings that we're proud of there. There are 17 different engineering majors to choose from. That's a lot of different choices to make, but we'll talk a little bit about how you might be able to learn a little bit about those before you have to make that decision. There's some you may have never heard of. Like I said, I'm a senior in nuclear engineering. I had never heard of nuclear engineering before I got to Purdue. So you'll have an opportunity to learn about all the different ones before you have to make a decision. We have around, I believe it is 9,700 undergraduate engineering students, which again is a lot. Purdue is a big school, and with big schools come a lot of opportunities. So that's something to keep in mind. And we always say you can make a big school feel small. You can't always make a small school feel big. We'll talk in the presentation about a couple ways to make this big school feel small, and really find your community among that many undergraduate students. So 82% of our 2018 grads had professional experience before graduating. That's a great stat that we're really proud of. We have our undergrads getting involved in companies before they graduate, whether that be through internship or co-op. They're getting some sort of paid experience before they have to go fend for themselves in the real world, getting a full-time job. And that 82% does not include students that are doing undergraduate research. I bet if it did include students that do research, it'd be at 100%. Our students are really involved getting internships or co-ops at companies and getting that experience. We have a 95% placement rate for engineering graduates within 6 months of graduation. So 95% of everybody graduating from Purdue is going and getting a job, or they're going to grad school. Your Purdue education will speak for itself and will get you where you need to go. And we have a $68,000 starting salary, which is nice, but not the most important thing. Just nice to keep in mind that your degree is going to pay for itself someday. And again, that's starting salary. I guarantee it'll go up from there after a few years. And we have almost 100,000 engineering alumni worldwide. This is probably my favorite stat of them all. Anywhere you go, you're going to run into a Purdue engineering alum. We are all over the nation, all over the world. I've seen engineering alum in Paris, France. I've seen them in California. You're most likely going to run into somebody if you're traveling and wearing a Purdue shirt and somebody will boiler up across the airport. So having a big school out gives us a great alumni network that really do look to help our current students.
All right, so now we're just going to talk about, give you more information about where everyone comes from. So 30% are in-state students, so that would be me. More than half of you guys are going to be out-of-state students like Mark. And then the rest are going to be international students. So we are very diverse in terms of where everyone comes from for the School of Engineering. We also have students representing all 50 states, over 100 countries, and we are 26% women, which is much higher than the national average. But we aren't satisfied with that number. We are continuously growing that percentage. And we have great resources and programs on campus to help with that. Most notably, like SWE, which is Society of Women Engineers, or WEEP, which is the Women Engineering Program. Both those programs offer great like networking and resources. I'm personally part of WEEP, and we do a lot of mentoring. We bring back past alum to kind of talk about their experiences. We have free like tutoring, help sessions, things like that, just to get people resources to make sure they feel comfortable doing engineering at Purdue.
So Dana talked a little bit about where our people are coming from, but here is a little bit of where everybody falls once they get here. So looking at all the different majors, the biggest standalone engineering major is mechanical engineering at around 1,400 or 20%. And then our next biggest quote unquote single major is actually, I believe, either industrial or aero and astro or one of electrical and computer. It's a little bit confusing because electrical and computer are two separate majors housed under the same school of ECE because they do take similar coursework, but they have slightly different focuses in their classes. The smallest majors are both interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary engineering, and the one I'm part of, nuclear. But something that's important to note is that no matter what major you choose, whether you're in the biggest, like mechanical, or the smallest, like nuclear, you're going to have a lot of individual attention from professors. No matter the major, we have about a 22-to-1 student to faculty ratio. So that's professors that you can go into their office hours. That's advisors for your college that you can go talk to at any time. There are professors and faculty just waiting to help you figure out what you want to do and what classes you want to take and that kind of thing. But something cool to note is that even if you added up all of these numbers on the sides for each of these respective majors, it wouldn't total that 9,700 number that I showed you earlier, because these are just our sophomores through seniors. Here at Purdue, we have a program called First Year Engineering, where we give you the opportunity in your first year to just get a general basics of engineering. You don't have to declare a specific discipline yet. You just take those general courses, you learn a little bit about what it's like to be an engineer, and then your second semester freshman year, you'll make that decision to move on into one of those majors. So there's a couple different ways to do first year engineering, and I'm going to let Dana talk about them.
Yeah, so in your first year, you have to take an engineering course. And as you see on the screen, there's 4 different ways to go through it. The I2I, the Ideas Innovation, is by far the most common way, and it's the class that you're automatically enrolled in once you accept your admissions to Purdue. Goss Scholar used to be known as the Honors College. So if you decide that you want to do an honors variant of first year engineering, you could do that by either applying to the Honors College, or you can apply to be a part of this Goss Scholar. You would take the same like honors version of the first year engineering course, but Goss Scholars don't have the additional requirements that that honors students would need. Another way is EPICS, and that's more of like a project-based, working with the community project on stuff, and we'll talk more about that later in our presentation. And then finally, we have VIP, like vertically integrated projects, and that's similar to EPICS, where you are working on a project, but you are working with like graduate students and faculty, so it's a little bit different. And all 3 of those, like the Goss Scholars, EPICS, and the VIP, are all application-based, so you would apply for that when you're applying for like living learning communities.
Yeah, and so those are going to be the ways that you're going to get that basics of engineering. You're going to take a fundamental engineering course, and then down at the bottom is where we have those other general courses that you're going to take your freshman year, no matter which engineering discipline you'd like to move into. So calculus, science, things like chemistry, communications. Every freshman at Purdue is required to take a communications course, then other electives as well, depending on where you fall. With AP credits, this is where we always like to say a little bit about AP credits, and because people often have questions about them. If you take APs and you might have taken, let's say, Calc BC, if you get the required score on Calc BC, you could technically test out of our Calc 1 and Calc 2 class here at Purdue. Then you could start in Calc 3. And students always ask if they should take the credit, if they should retake the class for an easy A. And what I'll say is if you retake the class, it's not necessarily going to be an easy A. But if you feel like you've mastered the material, then Purdue has also said you've mastered the material in order to move on. So it all depends. If you really feel like you need to take the class again, you didn't fully understand it, then we recommend taking it again. But if you feel like you've done well enough, you can move on. And we always recommend to check out some of our online exam postings. So the Purdue Math Department, for one, posts all of their old math exams online. You can go on and maybe find a final for Calc 2 and look it over, take it. And if you are doing really well, you know what's going on, you can probably take the credit for Calc 2. If you are lost in the sauce and you can't figure out what's going on, you should probably take the class again to make sure you have the basic requirements before moving forward. But those AP credits kind of let you shift around your later years. You're not really going to be able to start anything earlier because our degrees are 3-year plans and you need to finish first year engineering before you can move into your major. But they do really let you ease up your later years of schedule and maybe explore minors or certificates or things like that. So some of our fundamentals of first year engineering are obviously problem solving, critical analysis. You guys probably know what those mean, but you obviously know what teamwork is too. But I like to say that our first year engineering courses are all entirely team based. We're going to put you on a team and you're going to work in that team for the whole semester. We really like to simulate what industry is like, and industry is all teams trying to solve engineering problems. And so we're going to kind of echo that same sentiment and have you working in teams to solve problems the whole time. The other thing is career design. We want you to learn how to set up a project, follow a deadline, and hit that deadline. It sounds really easy, but it's not very easy when you're trying to balance other things like calculus courses or physics courses at the same time as having to build a robot or something. So in order to get that kind of teamwork career design, we have you guys working on big projects in this first year engineering course. Dana, do you want to talk about one of our projects from freshman year?
Yeah, sure. So Mark and I both took the honors version of engineering, but our biggest project that we had to work on dealt with Legos and more of like the ECE robotics type thing. We were given a box of Legos and an NXT kit, and we were told to build our own robot. It had to move without wheels, and it had to also do certain tasks like pick up a box, drop it off at the right location, follow a line based off a sensor. Um, and so it was a really involved project. You get to know your group really well. You see them all the time. This is where like definitely time management comes into play because um, realistically, there's only so much time you can work on these projects, and these projects were designed so that you can't complete it by yourself. You have to be working in your groups. And through these projects, I found out that I absolutely did not want to do EC or anything related to that. It was not my most favorite project, but I think that's one of the great ways that Purdue like introduces you to different disciplines is like through some of the projects or assignments that they have you do, you get a little introduction to like maybe different industries, and you can kind of figure your way out whether or not that'd be a good fit for you.
Yeah, and Purdue really does want you to find what discipline you want to go into. We have a 90% first year retention rate within engineering. So that's students going from first year into their respective colleges. The first year engineering is not a weed out program. I really like to call it a student success program. We're just doing this so that you can explore every different discipline and then make that decision. We find that about 50% of students come in with a great idea of what they want to do and then change their mind within the first year. So Dana and I are a perfect example of that. I came in really wanting to do biomedical engineering, and then I discovered that it was a lot more mechanical, a lot of medical. I guess I should have known because it's called biomedical, but a lot more than I ever thought. And so I was able to switch my mind or change my mind and switch over and switch gears into nuclear engineering. And I was very happy there, and that's where I've been. But Dana came in really wanting to do chemical engineering, and she is about to graduate in chemical engineering, so good for her. But that's why we do this first engineering program, because it doesn't hinder you if you know what you want to do, but it does help you if you want to change your mind. And we have a lot of resources to really help students get help within this first year too, and first year and beyond, because coming to college, classes are different. It's a lot harder being in a lecture hall of 300 people than it is being in a classroom of 30. So Dana, do you want to talk about kind of your favorite resource that you go to for help?
Yeah, sure. So there's a lot of different resources provided on campus. Like we always say, if you are paying for help, you might not be utilizing all the free resources that we have. My favorite, honestly, are just working with my peers. Because Purdue is a quarter engineers, when you first move on into your dorm, there's going to be a bunch of other engineers living on your floor. And you guys will all be taking summer classes, whether it's like physics, Calc 1 or Calc 2, or even your engineering class. And I oftentimes found it was easiest just to like do homework with people who either lived on the same floor as me. It was a great way to like brainstorm and come up with like trying to come up with a solution if we're stuck. And then also as a group, I would go with my friends to like office hours or for either the professor or for the teaching assistant. It made it a lot more, it made it a lot easier to approach the professors and teaching assistants as a group of friends rather than by myself. And I found that to be like a really useful way to get help. But I know a lot of my friends also utilize like the help rooms or like the supplemental instructions. So help rooms are basically designed where you could go in and you could do your homework. The biggest one we have is the math help. You sit there and do your homework, and then if you have any questions, you raise your hand, and like a teaching assistant will come over and help you with your homework. So it's a great way to like sit down there, work things through. Another one is supplemental instructions. So that's where a student who had previously taken the class and gotten and done well and gotten an A decides to come back and teach that class through their perspective. So it's usually after class around 6 or 7 p.m. And they just go through a lot of practice problems. They teach it from their perspective, and sometimes like that additional perspective really helps you to understand the material. But these are some of the many resources we have on campus to kind of help you through some of the tougher classes.
Yeah, Dana hit the nail on the head. So yeah, student success, we want you to do well, figure out what you want to do, and not fail classes. We want you to do well in classes. Okay, so with all that being said, this is a little different because it's an activity that we usually do in person, but we're gonna try it virtually. I haven't seen anybody say anything in the chat yet, so maybe now is the time to chime in. But one thing that we usually like to do when we're in an in-person presentation is go through kind of this theme park activity. And we always say Purdue's going to build a theme park, and there's a lot of different things that a lot of different engineers can do in relation to a theme park. So usually we split the students up and they would come up with things, but I want to give you guys a couple minutes, and if you can think of anything that one of these 12 different engineering majors could choose you could choose from any of the 12, pick one or two and say in the chat what they might do in relation to a theme park. I'll give you a couple minutes to do it, but Dana and I will go through them all at the end, but I want to see what you guys can come up with. So go ahead and send it in the YouTube chat, and Dana and I will be able to see it.
So Mark and I will kind of give like a quick example. So like for me, chemical engineering, um, there's a lot. Chemical engineering is actually pretty broad in terms of all the different disciplines and industries you could go into. And so, a big one would be like the energy industry or like petroleum. So if we wanted any like petroleum powered go karts or anything like that, that'd be through chemical engineering. Another big component would be like the pharmaceutical industry. So if you get a headache and you pop an aspirin, that like the process of manufacturing that would be through chemical engineering as well. And then like the food industry is another big one too. Like we could be providing chips. So chemical engineering is pretty diverse in terms of what it's able to do.
Yeah, and I'll give a quick example for nuclear because it's pretty tough. Obviously, we could have a nuclear power plant somewhere off-site powering our theme park. But outside of that, nuclear engineers do quite a bit with nuclear propulsion. So we could help with any of the propulsion systems for the roller coasters. It doesn't have to be nuclear powered for a nuclear engineer to work on it. And similarly, if you do break a bone or something happens on the ride and you need an X-ray, there's probably a nuclear engineer behind that X-ray machine that they're using. But we haven't heard from anybody in the chat. That's okay. We will go through all of these. So I guess, Dana, I'll take like the first. Oh, wait, somebody did just pop in. Environmental ecological engineers could help minimize the negative impacts of the park on the surrounding area and design sustainable waste management. Very good. That is definitely true. Our triple E's, our environmental and ecological engineers, will definitely look at the space before the park goes in, make sure that we're not going to destroy any ecosystems with our park. And then while the park is already built and in service, they will definitely work with waste management or wastewater systems, any sort of like kind of waste management to make sure that we're not doing anything harmful to the environment. We're recycling when we need to recycle, all that good stuff. But very good job. Dana, I'll take like the first six and then I'll have you hop in. But for our aeronautical and astronautical, they do a lot with kind of aerodynamics, G-forces, which, as we know, is very important in roller coasters. Oh, we just had another one pop in. When I get to UC, I will definitely say what you said. So they will work on making the kind of roller coaster cars as aerodynamic as possible, minimizing G-forces so that if you're on loops, you're not gonna, get, well, you might get sick, but not hurt you, and that kind of thing. So ag and bio, so agriculture and biological are typically lumped together, but they're actually quite different. Agricultural engineering, they might work on any sort of food process, getting food into the park. If there is kind of a farm to table restaurant, that kind of thing. They also do things similar to environmental engineers, so they might look at the environmental impact of the park. And then biological engineers look at a lot of things on the nanoscale. So they might look at how to keep the park clean from too many germs, how to keep people healthy while they're there, not spreading any diseases. I mean, that's pretty relevant these days among our crisis. So that would be kind of what a biological engineer might do. Biomedical, any sort of safety restraint or safety rule at a theme park probably came from a biomedical engineer looking at the impact of the roller coaster on the human body. So things that say, if you're a child, don't ride this ride. If you're pregnant, don't ride this ride. Or even like the big kind of seat things that come down, designing those to make sure they protect you but don't hurt you. Okay, and then Dana talked about chemical. So civil engineering, they're going to look at everything infrastructure. So how do we get people in and out of the park? Are we going to have sidewalks? Where the sewage system is going to go? Kind of just the overall design of the park. And then a construction engineering and manager will actually take the blueprints that a civil engineer would make and then make sure that they happen. So they will be on the construction site managing the inflow and outflow of materials and managing the actual construction. All right, Dana, do you want to hop in?
Yep. Okay. So electrical and computer. Electrical and computer could design programs to run lights and sounds. Yeah. So electrical and computer, basically everything is run electronically nowadays. And so you would have like the roller coasters, you press a button and like there's a code that like runs a whole roller coaster. So anything and everything in the theme park will be run through electrical and computer engineering. It's very applicable. We also kind of talked about EC or Triple E earlier. For industrial, electrical computers and makers. Yeah, that actually ties in really well with the industrial component of it, because industrial engineers, it's a little tricky, but essentially they're more known as like process engineers or efficiency engineers. They're more so designing the park and trying to find out like how to make things more streamlined, how to get to fit the most number of people in line in a certain area. So they're going to look at like the traffic flow and how to like be efficient with like the lines. And so there actually are a bunch of industrial engineers hired by Disney called Imagineers. And actually a Purdue alum created the idea of a magic band, which is what was mentioned earlier in the chat, where like they have a band that has your fast pass, you have like your room key, everything is on that band, makes it really efficient, really quick. That's kind of like a blend of like electrical and industrial. Moving on, materials. So materials is what it sounds like. It's about what material do we use to build the roller coasters? Like, do we want wood? Do we want steel? If we want a steel coaster, what are the tensile strengths of it? Like, where does it fail? How could we reinforce it to make it stronger, more durable, more rust resistant, things like that. So they deal a lot more with like the actual chemistry and makeup of these materials. And then in terms of mechanical, they're very broad. They could do anything and everything, which is why mechanical is such a popular discipline at Purdue. But like one I always like to touch upon are like the brake system. Like a lot of mechanical engineers will deal with that, and it's important for roller coasters to be able to stop once they've started. And so that's a system that they would be working on.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of insight into each of our different majors. But I do like to talk about two more that weren't listed up here, and that's interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary engineering. So, as you guys might remember from earlier, those are two, the combined majors of those two are only 92 students, so they're not huge, but they are what I call the choose your own adventure majors. So interdisciplinary engineering is kind of a combination of an engineering discipline with a non-engineering discipline, and it's for students that want an engineering background but don't ultimately want to practice engineering. So this is somebody that might be looking to go pre-med or pre-patent law or pre-PA school, and they can get kind of the engineering background before going on and getting that higher degree. It's a non-ABET accredited degree, which is important to note, and you're going to be picking and choosing classes from engineering, from outside of engineering, and kind of creating a unique degree that way. Then there's also multidisciplinary engineering, which is sort of the combination of multiple engineering disciplines. A multidisciplinary engineering is kind of our answer for trying to double major in two different engineering disciplines, because that's not really possible in 4 years. It's probably not even really that possible in like 6 years. It's challenging. Each school has their own specific set of requirements. So multidisciplinary engineering lets you kind of pick and choose classes from different engineering majors to create a unique degree. It is ABET accredited. And some of the typical pathways that multidisciplinary engineers follow are things like acoustical engineering, studying the combination of materials as well as kind of like the shape of the building, like a civil engineering with materials to, as well as electrical and computer to kind of see how sound travels best in spaces. There's also video game engineering, roller coaster engineering, uh, pharmaceutical engineering. There's a lot of different textile engineering. There's a lot of different kinds. Um, but those are two very specific degrees. If you feel like your interests lie outside of these 12, or I mean, the couple that we have up on the screen, you can look to those majors, but you really are planning you're building your plan of study from the ground up. So we really only recommend those if you are really dead set on doing one of those kind of more specific individualized majors. So we're about to move a little bit more into the student experience, kind of some of our opportunities here at Purdue that we've got. We're going to talk about things like research, internships and co-ops, study abroad, other student life things. But if you guys have any questions about anything that we've talked about already, feel free to send them in the chat. We'll stop at whatever time to answer them. But we are going to go ahead and move on and talk about EPICS.
All right. So, like we mentioned earlier, EPICS is another way of doing your first year engineering class. And EPICS used to stand for Engineering Projects in Community Service. It no longer stands for that just because we've opened up the program to all disciplines, because realistically, you're not going to be able to finish a project with just engineers. You're going to need marketing students, computer science students, and all other backgrounds as well. But essentially, what you're doing is you're learning the same, the same engineering principles that you would be in any other engineering course, whether that's like the career development or any of those other things. But what really differs is the projects. So in EPICS, you're actually assigned to a community service project. And so these are projects that different communities, whether that's in West Lafayette, within Indiana, the US, or even globally, they come to Purdue and they present a project saying that they have this problem. They would like a Purdue engineer to work on it, to solve it. And then that would be the project you work on. And so these topics can range from more medically based all the way to like more research based. It all varies on what problem is presented. And so in this picture, you see a group of students working on actually like a little device. So they were partnered with the Indiana School of the Blind, and they're actually creating a Braille to text translator, e-reader type thing. So if a teacher were to type something out and send it, this device would translate it into Braille, so a student who's hard of seeing could read. And then if a student types something out of Braille, it would translate it into text for the teacher. And this technology is currently being patented right now. So this is a little example of a project you might be working on. And like These projects do range in length of time, so it could be a really long project, it could be really short. And you for epics, the nice thing is you don't have it's very flexible in terms of how long you want to be a part of it, when you want to join. So you can join your freshman year and do it all the way through senior year, or you can do it one semester your senior year. It's very flexible. It's up to you in terms of how you want to do anything with it. And then also the nice thing about epics is they have a learning living community. So you can live with other epic students to kind of get that smaller community feel on Purdue's campus if that's what you choose to do.
Yeah, Epics is an awesome opportunity to get that hands-on experience. And like Dana said, you can do it as early as your first semester freshman year to get that experience right off the bat. So another way that students commonly get experience while they're an undergraduate is through research. So we have a lot of money coming in for research. Purdue is an R1 institution. That means that every professor needs to be doing some sort of research while they're here. So $454 million in research awards last year, and that was a new record. I'm really proud of that number. We've got over 2,000 undergraduate engineering projects each year. I like to highlight that it says undergraduate because sometimes when colleges talk about research, it's graduates only. Here we want our undergraduates involved in the research process and really doing the work too. We want you to get that hands-on experience right off the bat. So a couple of our big labs on campus. One is shown here. This is our Burke Nanotechnology Center. A lot of different majors do research in this lab. I've known aero and astronautical engineers to do kind of nano satellite work there. I've done work through nuclear in Burke. Another big thing that happens in Burke is cancer research. So biomedical engineers and biological engineers doing work in there. That's a great lab space that a lot of people work in. There's also our Bowen Civil and Construction Engineering Lab, which is obviously, like I mentioned, for those civil and construction engineers. And they do a lot of structural analysis. And so they'll build 3-story buildings inside and put it on an earthquake simulator, watch everything break. So these are some of our more formal labs that you can apply to work on a project there and do it for either pay or for credit. But another way about doing research is just talking to your professors. So going into your professor's office hours at the end of class and just asking them about what they do. And somebody just asked in the chat, how easy is it for FYE students to get into research? And it's on you to go talk to your professors. I have known people, I myself have I was involved in research my first semester freshman year. So it is common. It just depends on what kind of field you want to do research in. You don't necessarily have to do research in your intended major, but you do have to go reach out or apply to go get involved in research. So it's easy. You just have to go grab it. I hope that answers your question, Maria. But like Epics, research is a great way to get experience to talk to recruiters about later. I have had my research on my resume, obviously, and that's most commonly one of the things that I get asked about is how that has gone, what I've contributed to the project, and kind of how I've been able to work independently, but also with my professor in that regard. And I know this is a long time coming, but if you are thinking about graduate school, it's really important to get involved in undergraduate research right off the bat and get that experience under your belt.
All right, so now we're going to talk about internships and co-ops, and this is probably one of our favorite slides to talk about just because you do go to college because you want to get paid. And so Purdue has a lot of opportunities for co-ops and internships. I'll kind of just start off by telling you the difference. So internships usually a 10 to 12 week one-time contract with a company. It's mostly for students who want to graduate in 4 years, but also like don't really know what they want to do with their degree. So internships are a great way to kind of see, to play around with different companies and different industries, whether it's like a big company, a startup, or anything like that, just so you get the breadth. Whereas co-op is more about depth. So you are signing a 3 to 5 term co-op, which means that you are going to be rotating with that company 3 to 5 terms. So co-ops usually do push graduation to 4.5 or 5 years, just because you are taking semesters off to go work. But in terms of being a student, you are only on campus and paying for being a student for the same like 8 semesters like you normally would. And so co-ops are a great opportunity for students who like know they either really want to do this industry or they really want to work for this company. And so they want to see more about like how the inner workings of the companies work, because you'll be rotating through different positions, so you get to see different aspects of that company. Um, as you can see, we also have many career fairs. The biggest one, it happens in the fall. It's 3 weeks after school starts, and it's called Industrial Roundtable. We bring almost 400 companies onto campus for internships, co-ops, and full-time positions. And so it's a really great opportunity for students to get those internships and co-ops. And like I said, it is 3 weeks after school starts. So recruiters will often tell me that Purdue is the first school that they visit, which kind of shows like the Purdue name and strength of like Purdue engineering, because the recruiters want to come get their spots filled from Purdue engineers before visiting other schools afterwards. But that's actually how I found both of my internships. I did 2 internships with Procter and Gamble in Cincinnati, working on bounce dryer sheets. So if you use that product, keep using it. That's something I worked on. Um, but I chose to do internships because first I wanted to graduate 4 years, but also because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. It was actually through my internship experience that I found out that I absolutely hate research and development. I definitely did not want to do that going full time. And so this year, when it came to looking for a full time job, I knew I didn't want to go into the research and development section. And so, as a chemical engineer, the two of like another big area would be like manufacturing. But a lot of times for manufacturing, you have shifts, and like that type of lifestyle I didn't think would really suit me. And so I was trying to find an alternative way to apply engineering. That's how I came upon consulting. And so as a full-time, once I graduate and I start working full-time, I'll be actually a consultant engineer in Chicago. But Mark, do you want to talk about your experience?
Yeah, definitely. So, um, in a similar way to Dana, I chose the internship route because I didn't really know what I wanted to do with the field of nuclear engineering. And so, if I had chosen a co-op, I kind of would have been locked in something that I might not have liked. But I did my first internship with a nuclear power plant vendor. They made nuclear fuel because I really thought that nuclear power was the only thing that a nuclear engineer could do. Um, so I did that first internship, which was in Lynchburg, Virginia, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't really think that that was ultimately what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so the next summer, I looked to go more into the nuclear defense security kind of field. So I did my second internship with the government. I worked for Lawrence Livermore National Labs, and I was working in their counterterrorism and nuclear threat reduction division. And I was working on detecting nuclear weapons in moving vehicles, which was a lot more interesting to me. I really enjoyed it. I did that out in California, and I decided I wanted to do that type of work, but I wasn't really sure if I wanted to stay at Lawrence Livermore National Labs. And so I kind of was able to decide that full time I wanted to work on those kind of detectors and nuclear weapon detection, but I want to do it for a private company, and that's what I'm doing after graduation. And I'm doing kind of a blend of engineering and sales. I'm going to be a sales engineer, so I'll be working with our clients on the product, teaching them how to use the product, and kind of managing what they want to see out of the product and coming back to our company and working on it. Um, that was a great way for me to blend communication skills with engineering. We find that a lot of our Purdue students are very good at communicating their ideas because that's an emphasis that you have while you're here. So oftentimes we find ourselves in kind of consulting roles like Dana, sales roles or managing roles, that kind of thing. But internships allow you to both explore different types of the industry and also different parts of the nation. Like I said, I was in Virginia, California, Michigan. So we just had a question. What's the earliest a Purdue student can get an internship? It's a great question. It's not super common for freshmen for summer after freshman year having an internship. I didn't have one my summer after freshman year. Dana, you did though, right? Oh no, Dana didn't either. Okay, so sometimes it'll happen that after freshman year you can have an internship. It's more common to start after your sophomore year, and then you've got your sophomore year. We call it sophomore year, but it's summer after your sophomore year internship, summer after your junior year internship, and then you go full time. So if you go to I or Industrial Roundtable as a freshman, you totally should. There's still a good chance that you can get an internship after that summer. It's actually more common for freshmen to be looked at for co-ops because they're longer term, and then the company can kind of mold you into the employee that they want. So hopefully that answers your question. Definitely still go for an internship for the summer after your freshman year, but don't be like super down on yourself if it doesn't work out, because for most students, it doesn't really happen then. All right. I think, Dan, is there anything else we need to hit here?
Do we talk about like the CCO?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so we have something called CCO, and it's like the Career Center and Opportunities. But essentially, what happens is it's kind of like a catch-all for helping you get to your career. And so they have a lot of resume workshops where you could get your resume looked up right before IR. You also have mock interviews. So if you've never done an interview before, you could go in, you could do a mock interview with them, and then they'll give you some pointers and tips on how to improve next time when you do like your actual interview. They also have like a little closet, so if you were to forget like formal wear, you could borrow some clothing from there. But the CCO is a great opportunity. They have if you go online, they actually all companies will post their job openings for internships and co-ops online, and so you can post everything. You can apply to everything online and then go talk to recruiters in person. They do really great in terms of having all the resources available for you to get your internship and co-op. But yeah, like Mark said, it's hard after freshman year to get an internship. Not saying that it's impossible. I have a couple friends who have gotten it, but it's just really difficult because IR comes 3 weeks after school starts. So your resume is still your high school resume. You don't have a Purdue GPA. You don't really have any involvement on campus because you just started school. And so usually it's that second year once you have like a Purdue GPA, you know what discipline you're going into. You've got involvement, extracurricular activities on your resume. It's a lot easier for you to get those internship opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. And if you guys have more questions about internships or co-ops as we go, feel free to shoot them in the chat. We can always come back to this. All right, so study abroad. Dana did a pretty long study abroad, so I'm going to have her talk about it.
Yeah, so at Purdue, there's a lot of different ways that you can get involved in study abroad. You could do it during winter break, spring break, the May semester, which is about 2 to 3 weeks, or you could do it for an entire semester or even potentially entire year. And you could do it through your discipline, or you could just do it for general education credits. So for me, I actually really looked at Purdue just because I wanted to study abroad, and I know they had a really strong study abroad program. And I wanted to go for an entire semester, but I still wanted to make sure that I could graduate in 4 years. So I was really looking at the universities that have exchange programs with the School of Chemical Engineering. And so for me, I had the option of going to Australia, New Zealand, places in Europe, as well as Singapore. And I'm a Midwest kid and I hate the winter. So I knew going forward that, like, for my study abroad, I wanted to go somewhere warm. So I chose to go to Singapore. So I was there for an entire semester. I took my chemical engineering courses over there. I was able to travel. And I just really highly recommend that experience to anyone who's able to. The nice thing about exchange programs is that you are paying Purdue tuition. And so any scholarships that you might have, whether it's financial aid or merit based, like, they apply, and then you just pay for whatever housing situation you have overseas. So theoretically, if it's cheaper to live in the country that you're studying abroad to than West Lafayette, then you're actually saving money. And Purdue really does encourage students to study abroad. There's a bunch of scholarships you can apply for. The School of Chemical Engineering themselves said, "Oh, you're studying abroad for a semester. Here's $1,000 to kind of help with your transportation fees." And so I absolutely loved my experience. Something I didn't realize was just how much recruiters would ask me about my experience, because I do realize that, like, when you study abroad, you are learning the same material that's taught in a different way. You get to see how education is approached from a different perspective, a different culture, and that makes you, like, more well-rounded and more flexible in terms of, like, being a team member in a work environment. And so for any interview I ever had, like, my recruiters are always asking about, like, my experience in Singapore and, like, what I liked, what I didn't like, and all the things I did. So I highly recommend studying abroad for anyone and everyone. But Mark, you also study abroad too, right?
Yeah, kinda. You don't have to go abroad just with classes. I actually had an opportunity to go abroad through the research that I've done here at Purdue. I just applied and sent my poster to a research conference that was happening in Austria and I was accepted. This was actually, it was all my research that I'd done freshman year, and then I traveled my sophomore year. So it can happen really early. But I went for a week of my fall semester, sophomore year, to Austria to present my research at this conference. It was really awesome. I didn't really have to pay for anything other than what I bought while I was there, obviously. But Purdue paid for my hotel, my flight, all that good stuff. And I got credit for going abroad and presenting research. So really do your best to figure out some sort of way to go abroad, whether that's for like a spring break, for a winter break, for if you want to go abroad for an entire semester, totally do it. It's totally possible to graduate in 4 years and do it. My roommate is in computer engineering, and he studied abroad in Italy for a Maymester and studied abroad for an entire semester in Madrid, and he's still graduating in 4 years. So it's totally possible. We want you to go do it and get that global engineering experience. All right, student life. So outside of all the academics and all of the professional kind of opportunities like research and study abroad and all that good stuff, we want you to have fun and we want you to get involved in different things on campus. This is another one of those ways to make this big campus feel small. So up at the top left is some intramural Quidditch. I've never played myself, but I've heard that it is very fun. I'm a big Harry Potter fan, so I'm kind of surprised I never played. But intramurals have been awesome for me to kind of continue having fun in sports, even though I cannot play at like a D1 level. I played football in high school, but I was able to play like intramural softball, intramural turf soccer, intramural sand volleyball. Volleyball is a really fun one. You play volleyball on a racquetball court. So intramurals are super fun, really easy to get involved. We also have stellar Purdue bands and orchestras. If you're into the All-American Marching Band, you should totally get involved there. Or we have a lot of really talented dance teams like the Gold Duster dance team or the Purdue dance team, as well as the cheerleading team. There are also technical organizations. So down on the bottom left is one of our Lunabotics robots that they've built in the past. There's things like Lunabotics, there's Baja SAE racing teams, there's solar racing. So different technical organizations that you can build a product and then you go and compete. And then obviously we are a Big Ten school, so it's really fun to go to the sporting events and watch Purdue, even if Matt Harms just left and our football team isn't great. It's still really fun to go and cheer on the Boilermakers. But what's kind of not listed here are some of our more professional organizations, things to get involved with to either help students, prospective students, alumni, whatever. So Dana and I are both a part of PSEF, that's Purdue Student Engineering Foundation. So we're a student organization that works to talk to you guys, prospective students, and give you guys our experience on Purdue, how we've enjoyed it, that kind of thing. There are other professional organizations like SWE, Society of Women Engineers, that Dana talked about earlier. There's PESC, Purdue Engineering Student Council, all kinds of different professional organizations to get involved with and really pursue your passion. We recommend getting involved in maybe like one professional organization and then one fun organization to kind of keep you involved in things and not getting bogged down by schoolwork. Because having multiple things to do makes me more productive. I don't know if it's the same way for you, but it does help us manage our time better. And it is super possible to get involved and still do well in your classes. Dana and I are both involved in a lot of different things, and we're able to succeed in class just fine. We both have full-time jobs. We're both graduating, so it's not impossible for engineers to do things on campus. You have anything you want to add, Dana?
No, I
Okay.
would say just like make sure you do get involved. A lot of times, school will teach you the technical stuff you need, but getting involved, especially in professional organizations, are a way for you to develop your soft skills, how you present, how you talk to other people to communicate like the ideas or the technical stuff that you have. So we always highly encourage like at least one professional organization, not only to develop those skills, but also like the networking opportunities. Um, you never know who in those organizations have like job openings or accepting resumes, and like through those connections you could get internships or experiences you never thought about.
Yeah, definitely. Good point. Okay, so now we're moving into some kind of important things, deadlines things. So if you guys are tuning in and you are current juniors, is that right? Yeah, juniors in high school. The Common App is going to open up for you August 1st. and we only want you to pay attention to this November 1st deadline. January 15 is our regular decision deadline, but our early action, which is non-binding, is November 1st. I guess before I continue, I'll answer Maria's question here. She asked if we participate in any part-time jobs, and if yes, how did it affect your organization participation? That's a great question. I worked as a tutor and a TA while I was here at Purdue and involved in organizations. You kind of have to treat it like another organization or involvement, and if you have a part-time job, you can totally do that and do class. And if you have time, do something else as well. There are quite a few students who do it, who work at sometimes like students work the desk at a library or they work at a restaurant in the union or something like that. It's very common, and because you're working in kind of a college town, usually the bosses or whoever are pretty flexible with hours. If you have class at certain times, and if you only have shorter gaps, sometimes you can work shorter shifts. So it definitely will make your life more busy, but it is possible to do it. Anything you want to add on that, Dana?
Yeah, I'd say as for 1 year I was a resident assistant, and so I was working year round, I guess. And if anything, it just makes you more aware of the time that you have, because especially for like a resident assistant, there's certain times that you have to be in your room or like you have to be in the building for duty or for rounds or anything like that. So I wouldn't say it like prevented me to participate more in like more or less in or different or my other organizations. It just made me more aware of like the time that I had available and how I wanted to schedule my time so I'm still able to be as involved as I want to in other organizations, but while still making sure the homework gets done and my responsibility as like an RA get met as well.
Yeah, cool. All right, hopefully that answered your question. So, moving back to kind of the applications. So, August 1st is when everything opens. When it says to note your intended major, just put first year engineering. We've had some issues with students applying to our College of Polytech, which is not engineering. So, just to keep it clear, you got to apply to first year engineering. November 1st is early action deadline. It's also our deadline to qualify for merit scholarship and the Goss Scholars and the Honors College. So, if you want to apply to the Honors College, you got to apply by November 1st. And if you want to be in the Goss Scholars, also November 1st. If you miss that November 1st deadline, it's okay. You have until January 15th to apply. And then once you do apply, if you applied by November 1st, you're going to hear back on January 15 about early action and your merit scholarship. Sometime between February and March, you'll hear about the Honors College and Goss Scholars. Then if you didn't apply till January 15th, you'll hear back by March 15th. So hopefully if you are a senior tuning in, you have heard back. You know that you're either in, I guess hopefully you're in if you're tuning into this presentation. And you have until May 1st to choose. So you seniors that know, you still have about 3-ish weeks to decide.
They extended it this year to June 1st.
Oh, good to know. So because of all the craziness, you guys actually have until June 1st to decide if you'd like to come to Purdue or not, which obviously Dana and I love it here, so we can't speak highly enough about it. But the decision is all up to you. So that is all we've got for you today. We're almost right on time. If you've got any questions, feel free to call the Office of Future Engineers at this number or shoot them an email. We will put the link to their website in the chat. We'll also put the link to PCEP's website in our chat. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Dana and I will stay on for like 5 to 10 minutes. If you've got any questions, throw them in the chat. We would love to hear from you. You have a preference between SAT or ACT? Question. So I would say probably the ACT is more widely accepted and it is super scored. I think you can find all of our average scores online. So both the SAT and ACT are super scored. I think it's up to you which one you really want to take. Some students prefer the SAT over the ACT and vice versa. I know I preferred the ACT because I did better on it. That's totally up to you if you'd like to take both. I believe Purdue will accept both scores or just one or the other. So it's up to you. All right, any other last minute questions? All right. Thank you everybody for your time. Looks like we don't have any more questions, so we are donezo.